Hi there, and welcome to another educative and enlightening episode of AAU Talks on AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa. And my name is Agyemang Okyere Darko. You know, AAU TV is dedicated to always bring you content that's informed to transform. And with such transformational content, we want to just let you know that we're in abnormal times. I mean, everybody keeps saying that we're in abnormal times, and it's true because COVID-19 has become the new normal. That means that we have to always ensure that we wear our nose mask and wash our hands, keep with soap and running water, and also keep that good distance because you can't afford to get infected, also spread the virus to other innocent people. And today, understanding the presence of COVID-19 everywhere, globally, and even in our continent, there is a need to understand how COVID-19 has impacted the teaching pedagogy and all institutions, especially in the African higher education institutions, where pedagogy here means the teaching approaches and practices that we adopt in our institutions. Basically, how has COVID-19 impacted this? So I really want to bring you this very wonderful topic, and I have a wonderful guest in the studio to help us discuss it better. So don't go anywhere. After this short break, I'll introduce to you who our guest is and zoom right to the discussion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. On AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa, as we inform to transform. And my name is Agyemang Okyere Darko. Before we went for the break, I introduced to you the topic for today. It's all about how COVID-19 is impacting or has impacted the teaching pedagogy in all institutions, especially the African higher education institution. And with me in the studio to help discuss this topic is our very own quality assurance expert and project lead for the hacker, Dr. Vale Makuku. Doc, you're welcome to AAU Talks.
Thank you very much, Agyemang.
Yeah, I'm glad having you again with me here.
Thank you very
It's
much.
nice with you. Doc, you've been holding a series of workshops and sessions, which you are always prolific. I mean, you keep doing this. What's happening this time with your workshops? What are you focusing on this time?
This time we are focusing on best practices in managing grants and also grant application, research and project grants applications, because they are there.
Okay.
But the issue is in institutions, people are frustrated. They've always been applying, they don't get it. But basically it's because they don't have the knowledge and skills. Some do have, some don't have. But we need to beef up and support them in order to write quality proposals.
Great. I'm just sort to say, take you back from the theme though, but this one also calls for so much of your attention, which is about the teaching pedagogy we're experiencing now in the African higher education setting because of COVID-19. But now take us through on the trail. How has it been like, pre-COVID-19 that we didn't even experience COVID-19? What was the normal pedagogical system in our institutions?
Thank you very much, Agyemang. So, pre-COVID-19, we have more than 70–80% of institutions in the continent definitely doing face-to-face.
Okay.
And we didn't have much of blended learning because there was no need.
Yeah.
Students come on campus at their lecture rooms and they could just have their lectures like that. In fact, pre-COVID-19, the issue of large classes was problematic because now people were saying, how do I teach a class of 500? How do I teach a class of 1,000? But now with the Zoom, that problem could have been alleviated long back.
Exactly.
So that time we had a scenario like what I said, more than 70–80% of the institutions doing face-to-face. We have institutions like the University of South Africa, the University of Tunis, Nigeria Open University, Tanzania Open University. Those have, for many years, if I look at UNISA, now it's more than 142 years of online distance and learning.
Okay.
And then we also have universities like University of Cape Coast, they had some departments and faculties which had a distance portion, online and distance, like in the education department. And I remember in Zimbabwe, we have the University of Zimbabwe and Bindura University of Science Education. They had the virtual open and distance learning, which was just a component within the university, but not for everyone.
Yeah.
And they normally did it for those who needed some bridging courses, and then they upgrade them now to start doing degrees.
Does this mean that, pre-COVID-19, we had online learning that popular? Would you want to allude to the fact that...
No.
Because these were... Okay, so when did this come in? Is it post-COVID that we had these open universities rising up, or they were there, but they were not really working that much?
They were there, but highly discredited. And people did not have trust in open and distance learning. In Zimbabwe, I think we have also the Zimbabwe Open University. I remember very well that with some Zimbabwean universities, when they sent out a call for lecturers and so on, they would say, for academic staff, we wouldn't want to take from an open and distance institution, and only for academic support staff, which means they had lots of ill feelings about online open and distance learning. But you look at me, I'm a UNISA product. And I think without bragging, I've done very well. So it depends with the circumstances. The lack of trust, it came in mostly on the aspect of assessment and quality assurance. Quality assurance in the whole thing, to say when the teaching and learning is taking place, earlier on there were these modules. So there were printed modules which would be posted to students. And there were weekend centers which they would go and
converge
meet,
and then
but
study.
Some would not go there. And then there were emails and which were sent for communication for those people to be schooled. And so people did not think that would match up with the face-to-face of the lecture rooms and so on. But now the definition of a lecture room has since changed. In fact, long back, it's only a perception, because when we do field trips, the classroom is where we have gone to do our field trip. It's not a four-walled classroom. So the coming of COVID has actually even defined the classroom more and more out of being a four-walled classroom.
This reminds me of now how COVID struck us, that invasion, and then we thought we could detect the unpreparedness of these institutions towards online learning. And we had so many articles being written during that time. Some of the likes of Francois Bequin, who wrote about the unpreparedness of African higher education institutions towards COVID-19. That exposed how weak our systems were. You saw how some universities had to now derail back, break down, strategize, and then see how they could now roll out online learning. That's quite a shame. But even globally, this was a high struck.
True.
But in the African continent, can you give us a breakdown? How was it in the African continent, our preparedness, our readiness, and our willingness to go online when COVID dropped in?
So for us, we were undressed. But now, because I was also writing a proposal, there are many grants which came out related to COVID-19. Those who wanted to, some were calling for people who wanted to do researches on checking on their what is lacking, what is there, and what is needed. During that time, I read a lot of literature related to the current situation in the continent. So what I realized is that it was tough. For us in Africa, I think lockdowns started in March. Late February, beginning of March. And even here at the association, we closed around March or so. So when we closed, there were some institutions which within 2-3 weeks, they were on their feet. And there are institutions up to now which are still waiting for the end of COVID-19 to resume face-to-face.
Okay.
And then there are some institutions also which gradually, with months, so we had some which came on board in weeks, some in months, and some not even now. They tried to open, they realized that the threat is there, they closed, they reopen, or they are now saying this court, they come in 2 weeks, and the other group also comes in 2 weeks in order to maintain the social distancing which you talked about. But out of that, we have key issues. I just want to give 2 very good examples.
Okay, give us.
Like you said, that I ran a spate of virtual workshops, and also trying to support the institutions as AAU in general.
Yeah.
We tried to continue to send the message that let the university doors remain open.
Okay.
And that's when we started having some researches. But what happened, what I observed is that for one university, for example, in Ghana, we had Valley View University. They had certain competitive advantages. So for Valley View University, within 2 weeks, they were on. When the president announced that the classes would resume after the lockdown, face-to-face checking, they said we will not resume. And I caught up with them. What I learned is that they had degree programs in ICT.
Okay.
That was a competitive advantage.
Okay.
They were organized and had started that as part of their strategic plan in 2017, that they wanted to roll out online programs. So another competitive advantage.
Yeah.
They also had personnel who were also, I think the leadership, let me say the leadership, was highly proactive. So what they did is that immediately after, they took students who were doing programs in ICT, whether it's the software or ICT hardware and what have you, they brought them together with their lecturers.
Okay.
And can you imagine students working with their lecturers for a good cause?
Great.
So when they did that, they built what was called the rapid response teams.
Okay.
So the main institutional rapid response team was there to educate the students, because the students were highly resistant. When they heard that you are now going to learn online, what have you, and the many challenges of gadgets, data, all that, that university was a very good example.
Great.
So they tried to work on it. Counseling started to prepare the staff and the students. Some people think psychological counseling is a waste of time, but they knew it, that it would work, and it worked for them.
That's nice.
The rapid response teams had a psychologist and also people from the medical field.
Great.
And so it's not about ICT. It's more than that. You need the psychological preparation.
Of a psychosocial activity.
Exactly. So that the transition would be smooth. Remember now, some maybe were breastfeeding, some had toddlers in the homes, and so they got education and support on how they could manage still to carry on with their studies. Some were from rural settings. How were they going to be supported? Emails where they could now go and download somewhere, do their work, but still they managed, because they told me like only about 300 students out of their student population did not manage, and they were still going to cater for them. And the practical subjects too, you know, it's a problem teaching practical subjects online. Maybe we are going to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I think we'll have to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the transition process, give me a flashback of how things were pre-COVID-19 and how things should be post-COVID-19. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Chief, ready. 3, 2, 1. Go.
You're welcome back to AAU Talks on AAU TV, the voice of higher education in Africa. And thanks for joining us in this flashback we're having on how COVID-19 has impacted the teaching pedagogy in our institutions in Africa. And Doc, we're talking about the experience you had with some universities and how prepared they were. But that's a good one. We also want to now see the response. You were at the points of assuring quality, so you should have known about these things. How do you think, or please give us a brief understanding? How was the immediate response by most university management teams when it happened that we had to go online? Give us a brief response to that.
Tough stuff. People didn't know what to do. We were just undressed. And I remember as the AAU, when we realized that there was a dead silence, we moved on to start having these online support meetings and workshops and so on.
AAU deliberated, decided, okay,
AAU.
we'll train institutions.
Yes. So what we realized was that, for example, as a quality assurance personnel myself, I was following the newspapers and the issues from countries.
Okay.
The national accreditation bodies did not know what to do because they didn't have what to use. Now programs were accredited using the face-to-face.
Okay.
And now the programs now were said to be online.
Yeah.
I remember one university in Kenya was taken to court by students. I think they won the court case, but still they had to do it because they were saying
they didn't trust in the online system.
No, they said these programs are accredited for face-to-face and not for online.
And so they wouldn't
why are
want to
you
enroll.
forcing us to now do until they are also, there was confusion, pandemonium, and everything else that you can think of, which is showing that there's a disorder. That was it. Because even those, the national accreditation bodies and the quality assurance bodies, they were also caught unaware. And they needed to start thinking of how they would move ahead. So it was tough for everyone. But some people are good because, you know what, they've got what we call adaptability skills. They can quickly see a situation and adapt. Those are the kind of people who are needed like now. Because naturally, remember there's the fourth industrial revolution. It was coming to push this in, and that was motivated and spurred by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay.
And so people either need to shape up or ship out.
Let's look at the training process. You also had some workshops intended to train institutions, train students, perhaps basically just prepare them for this online. How would you say that these trainings go? And what were other trainings that you also witnessed or experienced that were going on just to prepare the university for online studies?
Thank you very much. I think in this case, it was so good that most of the trainings that started with the beginning of the lockdowns were free.
Okay.
So as the Association of African Universities, we also started with vice chancellors to check what they think their issues and their needs. We had another webinar with the national accreditation bodies.
Great.
What did they think? What were they lacking? What would be the way forward? And then we also, for me, I took the workshops in the new digitized normal from March to December 2020, touching on different aspects. How do you do research online, teaching online? And then we realized that throughout the world, there were different organizations which were also offering these like remote learning, emergence remote learning. It's what the new vocabulary which started coming.
Sure.
We never used to have that. And then it came asynchronous and synchronous teaching. How do you then blend to say this time you want them to come on Zoom. You know, data has always been an issue everywhere.
Challenge.
Yes, so people were saying, whereas people would come on board, but they would need some work to do elsewhere, like the concept of the flipped classroom.
Yeah.
Because I think there are some institutions which have really done well. The impact was not so felt. I gave you that example of the Ghanaian university, and I remember there was also a university in Nigeria, IAMO. I can't remember the full name. We also took them on board. They used the Canvas. Now, this was the time. And up to now, as the Association of African Universities, we have sent out calls for institutions to apply for the different capacity building workshops that they want. But I can tell you, people want to be trained on how to teach online using the Moodle platform or using the Canvas. But the Moodle platform is the most popular one because it is for free. You customize it.
Yeah, we're coming to the various system.
It's okay. You can push it. It's okay.
Yeah, enter. Chuchu.
Thank you.
So
where do we start from?
That's why I was asking his question.
Which question?
You are going to ask a question before I ended.
So, okay, so I was going to ask a new one. Okay, sure. Okay, so Doc, now let us now zoom into during these times of the training, you know, with the various systems, you know, the systems that were being used, the model system and all that. We'll talk about that. But I want to know, during the time where we were training these universities and the vice chancellors, lecturers, some stakeholders in there on how they could get used to the online system, we were also thinking about the opportunity to form more partnerships. Because now this opened the university to the whole, I mean, everybody, multi-stakeholder approach where industry could partner. Anybody who had interest or had a stake in facilitating online learning could partner. Did you witness or did you, can you tell us about any partnerships that were formed in these times or any?
The AAU did a lot of work in that regard, and I just want to acknowledge our Director of ICT, Ms. Nod Motlamin, together with the management. A lot was done because there was partnerships with Elen Africa, I remember very well, with Wiley's and with many other organizations. But the issue was also to negotiate on the part of the African universities so that they could not get raw deals. When they start saying, we also want to have this, can you help us with the online system and so on. Other than that, there's something which the Association of African Universities did, which is very good. They went to the extent of approaching the national governments to say they should have what we call, activate what we call the NRENs. The NRENs is National Research and Education Networks. So it's like when universities in Ghana, for example, come together, instead of the University of Ghana having its own internet account, University of Cape Coast, KNUST have its own account. They pool their resources together and they have one account for internet. So they bank on what is called the economies of scale, where you say you are buying in bulk. So the bulkier, the better. And so that would mean the internet cost goes down by 70% or more.
Volume is huge.
Exactly. And so this is what we are still encouraging the national governments. Like, for example, South Africa and East Africa, they use what we call UbuntuNet. And then West Africa has got Wakren. And then we have the NRENs, which are the national points. All this now, this is the opportune moment for them to come together and make sure that they strengthen the regional, national, and the continental research and education networks to activate them so that they can capitalize on bulk buying.
Doc, talking about partnerships here, we external partnerships. Let's talk about inter-university partnerships in this case. We sought during those times. We saw who was who. I mean, in terms of width and capacity, in terms of online capacity, who could roll out without feeling worried, and who perhaps didn't have any idea than to just re-strategize or know what to do. Were there any instance where some universities sought to leverage their capacity or their abilities to say, okay, that is what I have, this is what you have, let's come together and leverage our strength together so we can all roll out online programs together on a very robust platform? Did we, or were there something like that? Or perhaps universities had to now chart their own path on the call for supremacy? Which is which?
But on the whole, please, this one has got no evidence, what I'm saying right now. But what I know is basically we have the public and private universities. And definitely the understanding of partnerships in Africa is something that is worrisome. Why should public and private universities not work together? And they discriminate sometimes. This is a public, this is a private universities. I know the issue for national governments is that some of the private universities are private universities in Africa.
Yeah.
Then we have private universities for Africa, which means those which are private universities for Africa, they are owned by Africans here. But their challenge is the private universities in Africa, which belong, the owners are in other continents. And so national governments say, if we partner, what will be there for us? But I think people should think of the win-win situation. How can you partner with you benefiting and them benefiting, not necessarily thinking then that our revenue is supporting private universities, because some of them could have been very good.
Yeah.
And then I just want to give a recent example of this week or last week, just in recent times. There's a university in Egypt, Halloween University, which partnered with another university in Nigeria.
Okay.
So what they were telling me is that they agree on some degree programs which are already there. So they will co-teach the way you have rightly described it. So at one time, if it is Halloween University, which is teaching some modules, all the students from their university and that university will come on board, because now we have online.
Yeah.
So they come on board and do that course. And then another module comes and they share the courses to teach depending on their strength. I think that's what they are trying to leverage on.
Yeah. How about some collaborations? The South-South collaboration. How did we see these? Because we have some international organizations or institutions that were willing to support African institutions to work online, to train online, and most especially to build their human resources, especially lecturers, to be very well condescending to these online systems. Did you experience any of these things happening?
Yes, as AAU, we are like a bridge between the North and the South. So we had received many communications from different organizations throughout the world wanting us to link them with the institutions in Africa. But we also have one problem. Because sometimes you may not have a strong background of who they are. You are afraid of referring them to institutions. Because if things do not work well there, it's the Association of African Universities which will be blamed. The company you referred to us. But what I know and think is that something is going on. Institutions just go and check the kind of service they can get and where they can get it from, if they are really serious about upgrading their institution. And so whether it's provided in Africa or outside Africa, I think they are going for it. But my major challenge is that also, if there are some African companies which can help, like maybe help them set the Moodle platform, or fellow institutions helping other institutions because they are ahead.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the only issue is we shun our own selves. Even if one of us displays that they are capable, we don't pick it up. And so that's the issue. So, but I know for those institutions which intend to move on, they have already engaged companies and organizations, whether in Africa or outside, to now help them. But as AAU, what we have done is we have continued with trainings. And what I've also realized, I think 5 occasions in 2020 where I was invited as a special guest of honor and keynote speaker, I realized that people like, for example, I mean quality assurance, people are trying to freely support each other through creating networks or the networks that have already been existing. So with those networks, they are saying these are the scenarios which we have. How can we move on with our quality assurance standards? What do we develop in order to make sure that we also continue to have quality education? And I can tell you, Agyemang, the most difficult part and the most difficult aspect which I've seen is quality assuring online learning.
How is it so? How is it so? Because I think we have have we not got the systems or the expertise to assure that quality is indeed delivered online?
We have issues because now, you know, they ask you if you buy a smartphone, do you want to unlock it with face recognition or with
Or
what?
fingerprint.
Or fingerprint. Those are the technologies which are supposed to be deployed now by the institutions. But are they within reach? Can they buy them? Because that would solve the problems. Because when they now had exams, they did what we call reshuffling of questions. That is a good quality assurance measure. Because whereas you are answering number 1, my number 1 is your number 5.
So online, we can't ask the same question because I'm on a different level, you on a different level, but the same content, but shoveled up, just to assure there's quality.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's no cheating because academic dishonesty is the problem. It's the major problem.
That is why we're going through all this charade.
And that's why it is a challenge.
I would want to know, you know, on the other hand, the learners will have a different point of view to what is happening. But what would you assess was the learners' point of view in regards to their adaptability to the online systems?
Yes, thank you very much. So wherever I was invited and whenever I had the online workshops, I continued to emphasize that capacity building is not only needed for the staff. If you do capacity development for the staff and staff development on how to teach online, how about those students whom they are going to teach? They also need to be taught on how to learn online. So if we ignore that other side of the student, we are doing a lot of injustice and nothing will move. So whereas we are staff developing the lecturers, we also need to leverage and support the students so that they can do very well. There's another aspect to it, policies and handbooks and so on. All those things now need to take like a blended approach to have a policy now. Unfortunately, in most cases also, policies are written and are put there. And nobody opens and nobody knows where it is and check what is in existence. But we need working policies where now people will revisit a 1980 policy and now try to clean it up, remove the obsolete and bring relevant new materials. Like now we need policies which cater for the online teaching and learning. How are we going to do that? The digitized, the new normal workspaces even for non-teaching staff. what do we have in place? So it's quite broad and it's quite complex.
So, Doc, if I would say if universities were thinking, or let's say if people were thinking that okay, COVID will soon go away this year, and perhaps we can go back to our convenient and traditional point of view.
Okay.
Maybe that may be more of like a form of a mirage. It doesn't really happen. We're not even close to that because things are getting worse. What do you think should be the priority? What should be the current strategy that we must formulate and ought to formulate to ensure that we position our universities and these developing, let's say in the continent of Africa, ready for competition and excellence with online learning and studies?
Stakeholder partnerships, responsive governments. These governments need to check on national ICT infrastructure, and then they check on our internet services and internet providers.
Yeah.
What do we have in the rural areas? Do most of the rural areas have internet services
Not at all.
and ICT infrastructure?
Not
So
at all.
now that will create a bigger gap of inequalities in the education access. And that is a huge problem for us. So, at national government, if they don't prioritize investing in ICT infrastructure and internet services, we have a challenge. Because a university here could be ready, but at national level, there's no support. Maybe they want to roll out 10,000 capacity platforms, and they want to have softwares and applications which can be run by huge internet supply, bandwidth, or broader broadband, and all that. If the national capacity is limited, how will all the institutions in the country do it? And then when we go down now to the institutional level, the leadership, are they proactive? But do you know what you are saying is true, that even up to 2021, December 2020, people were still waiting to say COVID-19 will go. There are some institutions like that. And do you know what will happen to those institutions? They will close. They will close because the students are now applying new students. There are some institutions which have already done recruitment and enrollment of staff and students online. They've looked for online specialists. They've enrolled new cohorts of students, while others are still taking the wait and see stance. So those will close because by the time they open, all these other institutions, students have gone there because they see sustainability. They know that today, if COVID-19 is to strike again, or yet another pandemic, because now there are some media reports that in Guinea or one of these countries, Ebola outbreak is now there again. So we need not to focus on the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's look at the broader perspective to say, if anything that will not allow face-to-face teaching and learning comes, are we prepared? Okay, when there's nothing we can do blended, when we have a pandemic, we have online, but both should be
Stronger.
Yes.
Stronger.
So those are the issues, and it's very important for leaders of institutions to be highly proactive. If they are within their reach, they need to prioritize that. And that priority is very important.
That's so nice. Thank you very much, Dr. Makuku, for the time with us on AAU Talks as we delved into the impact of COVID-19 on teaching pedagogy. And we look forward to find some great transformation in the teaching approaches, because I know that COVID is becoming part of our lives. I mean, it's unfortunate, but we have to admit and understand and appreciate the need to now think of very encircling ways and means to facilitate the teacher learning in Africa and also all over the world, so we can grow in excellence.
One also, Agyemang, we have the practical-oriented disciplines. To say, what softwares, what applications. There are some which have been released, but when they are released, they are very, very expensive because we don't need to leave the technical universities, the engineering, the medicine. How are they going to be taught online?
You mentioned that one of the biggest challenges were the stakeholder partnerships. No, that is where we need to partner because these industries are in where they are also supposed to make money.
Yes.
However, we are also training these experts who will take over the human resource.
Yes.
So there's much more room and ground to initiate partnerships because we
That's
need the
true.
human resource. You need our machinery and
Yes.
equipment. So I think it works from there.
Yes.
So as Doc mentioned that the two issues, government responses and also stakeholder involvement. These are the two things that we have to ensure that we intensify in order to keep the African continent afloat in these times of COVID-19. Thank you very much for spending time with us on AAU Talks. My name is Agyemang Okyere Darko, and our guest for today is Dr. Vale Makuku, Quality Assurance Expert at the AAU, and we're glad you spent time with us. If you have any comments, just bring it on board, and we'll have it reviewed. Have a nice day. Be protected. Be safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.